Good. I'm just jumping on a little bit early to make sure the tech's working since I'm coming this week from a hotel.
Oh, where do your travels take you?
About 10 minutes up the road in Mesa.
Oh,
So
okay.
now my wife and I are just doing a weekend getaway. So
That's awesome.
little staycation, but
Very nice.
got to pop in for the book group.
Absolutely. Very
So did
cool.
you see that we canceled our meeting for today
I
about
did not.
the Silver Oak stuff?
Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we're not meeting today. There's just some legal things that we're working out with the entity structure and everything. And Brian well, we just thought it was best to hold off for a week until we figure all
Sure.
this stuff out. So,
Okay. Cool. I talked to another lady who's a sales specialist for Prestige Senior Living. She's actually in Phoenix.
uh-huh.
And so they have a couple of locations there. So sent her our case study to get some feedback. And then I looked on their website. They could definitely use a little bit of a refresh and all that good stuff. So
Cool.
yeah.
That's great. I feel like there's a lot of good stuff already happening and we're barely getting started. So,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah. Well, tell me about your book. How are things going with the book?
You got my proof.
Nice.
So
Good.
I've uploaded to every place. Amazon, Google, Apple Books is waiting for my tax stuff to clarify, I guess, or whatever. And then it's on Kindle for pre-order. And then that allowed me to do the Audible upload through ACX. So I'm going to work on that tomorrow, kind of polish up a few things, put in some bonus stories, and then upload that. And then just targeting November 1st to release it. So
Exciting times, huh?
it's surreal. Every time it's like, okay, cool. That's neat. And so yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And then started doing the outline for the next one for the senior living group to just say, here's all the things I want to get covered in that book so that we can utilize that to hand out to families and whatnot. So
Great. That's awesome. Yeah, that's the thing. Writing a book's kind of like running a marathon. Once you do one, you're like, it was hard, but I could do that
I could
again.
do that again. Yeah, exactly. And Allison said she wanted to participate in it. So she's still off work for another 2 months. So she's going to help me storyboard it out. And it's interesting because she hears my lingo from it, but she's not in it. So it's more of a true customer. So she'll be like, what does that mean? Or stop using that acronym, or I don't understand that. So it'll be a good balance.
Yeah,
And
it's good to have that kind of feedback. How's she doing? How's her health?
she's good. She's getting stronger. She's just finished cleaning windows. So I'm like, all right. I tell everybody, I said, when she's getting better because the husband eyes come back. So, things were clean, but were they that clean? Or I would have done it this way kind of thing. So, like, all right, you're starting to feel a little bit better, but, she'll get tired
She's
here
well
and
enough.
there and
Yeah,
snooze a little bit and whatnot. So,
but she's well enough to care about some of those smaller things.
absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
good.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, do you have any questions about your book at this point, the stage it's at with marketing or
So
reviews, or
it's
is
just
there
the
anything I
marketing
can
piece. You got any tips for that piece to kind of roll with or?
remind me again who your ideal audience is for this?
So a lot of this is around leadership. Obviously, I'm targeting the senior living because I've got a huge presence in that. Just like executive directors, regional directors, it can cross boundaries. It's not specifically designed for senior living. It's leadership in general. So, at the 9.99 price point, especially going into November, hopefully there will be people that will want to purchase that, even if they stick it in a stocking for somebody, new leaders just kind of emerging and then just to challenge some old leaders. So,
Hmm. Got it. Welcome, James.
Hey,
hi, James.
thank you. Hi.
We were just talking to David about his book. I got on a few minutes earlier and David was on here, so we're talking a little bit about his book. But James, is this your first time on?
It is, yes.
Okay, well, welcome. Uh, so I'm Josh, I'm the host. David is somebody we connected with a couple, like 2 months ago, maybe at the most, I think.
Yeah.
Nice.
And he's just coming out with his book in November, so it's coming out really soon. He just got his proof. We were just looking at that and talking about some marketing, or getting ready to talk about some marketing ideas. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you at? What do you do? And what's your book idea, or what are you working on?
Yeah, so let me just ask for your forgiveness in advance. I unfortunately added you to the wrong calendar, so our client booked over me in 30 minutes, or over
Okay.
us. So I can only stay until for 30 minutes.
Well, that's just
Yeah,
fine.
the
These
challenges
meetings,
of
you can pop in and pop out as you want to. So,
okay, all right. So I founded a company called Be Legendary about 20 years ago, and a little bit more than that, but close enough. And we have, reinvented ourselves several times throughout the years, and based upon all kinds of different reasons. And right now, we mainly focus on small businesses with founders. So anywhere really headcount from 25 people to 250 people. Revenue is less relevant, and we're taking all of our people, systems, experience, and expertise, and all this from Fortune 100 companies and bringing them to smaller companies with the idea that small business changes the world. It really is the only thing that does. I mean, the big companies get the glory, but it's the small businesses that really drive a lot of the innovation and blah 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 blah. I mean, they're magical. And we looked back. Of course, we went through the traditional COVID values and belief discussion, right? And completely burnt out on working with corporate America for many years with these, because the truth is that we sell hope. At the end of the day, regardless of the service or whatever, it's hope. And in corporate America, you roll out a great initiative, and a new executive would come in wanting to put their fingerprint on something and just sweep everything that we'd done for months or years sometimes away. And it was crushing. And we looked back during COVID and said, what do we really enjoy? Where would we have the biggest impact? Who did we love working with? And it was, in the end, the smaller companies. And so as we're finalizing that pivot over the years, I did some of those, I don't even know what to call it, sort of the marketing shticky, write a chapter with another famous person around the cover. I don't know what that's called. That book marketing ploy.
right, that book
where
thing.
you pay. Yeah, that book thing. Where you also get, I don't remember how many books that you get, and they never leave your garage. They just sit. I just recently threw all of them away. The last time I did that was, I think, 2010. And I've been hauling these books around for all that time. And I'm proud of my chapter. I wrote a great chapter, but actually I started writing a book some time ago, believe it or not. And then actually got taken off track a little bit from you, Josh. So I'm a longtime lurker, like first time person here. And
great.
it was, I started, so this is right pre-COVID. I was starting to do a podcast because everything that everyone told me is, James, people just need to hear your voice because you're super passionate about what you do, blah, blah, blah. And so you should do podcasts. And so I started a podcast based upon your book, Chief Marketing Officer at Work. You're shocked, right? Yeah,
I am. That's great.
That here I am, one more person who found that book and was like, wow. And so I was literally copying you, and it's just Chief People Officer at Work. And what are we doing? What are people doing? How are all of these different things, because I had so many questions and I just wanted to interview people and find out what was working, et cetera. And then I was, when COVID hit, I saw it coming a little bit sooner than most people, and I basically shut everything down. And I went full conspiracy theorist. The world is ending kind of thing. Society's going to rip itself apart. And I mean, I went full prepper, you guys, full prepper. And we had tons of toilet paper. By January 15th, we had huge stocks of toilet paper in our cellar, and
you can never have enough.
Everyone thought you never have enough. We used it. It all got used. Anyway, so I stopped doing the podcast, I was, I looked into it. You have to have 10 ready to go before you blah, 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 all this stuff. So I was doing all these interviews and loving it, but I was fully convinced that we were headed in a very different direction. I'm so happy to be wrong. And so I said, oh, you know what? I'm just going to stop the podcast because that's going to go away. Yeah, it was, little did I know that it would have been the perfect timing to launch it, but forget it. So now that we're here, and this is a long answer to your simple question. Now that we're here, we've made this intentional pivot to small business. The idea of a book has come back up, and I have a whole bunch of stuff that's written. And now I'm really what I'm doing here is really to decide, is that where I should put my time and energy right now? Is that the best way to market myself, if that makes sense? So I'm a pretty prolific writer. I can write pretty fast. I write the way that I talk in many ways. So not to say that it's not easy. It's not. But when I decide to write, it's easy for me to carve out time and do it, if that makes sense. So it's easy for me to commit
Great.
because I like it. It's fun. Yeah, thank God, right?
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
hard for
kind
a
of
lot
where
of
I'm at.
people.
It's like, yeah. Is that where I should put my time and energy? And frankly, if I'm being truly transparent, it's like, okay, talk me out of it. That's what I want to do because I like it. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah. And David, I'm not forgetting about you. I want to get back to your question about the marketing, but um, so James, this is the same question I was asking David, is who's your ideal audience? I mean, if you could just pull your absolute perfect audience for a book off the shelf or for your business, who would that perfectly ideal client or audience be?
Yeah, it would be it would be the founder of a company who's grown it to a certain point and has hit some kind of plateau with it, or is suffering one of typically two challenges. One is that they've reached a high turnover rate and they don't understand what's happening, or two, they're facing some significant expansion and they don't quite know how to scale their people with their business. They know how to hire people, but they don't really know how to create the people systems. So that individual typically is, and that's why we choose founders, these entrepreneurs, and we also focus on some less sexy industries, manufacturing, oil and gas, trucking, because they always have the people who are doing the work, and typically blue collar, although not always. Sometimes internet technicians and things, they're out on their own, and then there's the corporate office, the head office, and there's this cultural clash. And these owners, these founders, are wicked smart, extremely capable, and completely unsophisticated. And people understand people. They understand the work, but they can't understand what's happening. And that would be my ideal. That's my ideal client, is someone who's looking for answers. Like, okay, I don't know what to do next, because their role changes as they grow. Their role changes, and they try to use ABC to fix XYZ. When as you grow, you must change with it, and they don't understand how, why, what to do next, all of those sorts of things. So that's my ideal client.
I can relate to that. I kind of feel like you're describing me a little bit, at least there. So now, if I were to ask you, where do these people get their information from? Of course, it's going to be different. Some of these people read books. Some of these people would prefer to watch a YouTube video or listen to a podcast or go to a in-person event. So it's not like we can say all these people are really into books. So, but we know that some percentage of those people are willing to read books. And so then the question I would ask is, well, first of all, what do you prefer to do? Because some people, I don't think a book is the answer to everybody in terms of marketing. You can see that there are people who are extremely successful without a book out there because they get their information out some other way, whether it's TV, podcast, radio, YouTube, social media, whatever it is. So a book's not always the answer, but it might be the answer if it's what you prefer to do, and you're going to have an easier time publishing a book versus launching a YouTube channel because maybe you hate video. I'm kind of that way. I love it, but I hate it. So it's hard for me to do, but it's easy for me to crank out books. So I would prefer to do books, and I would prefer to work with people who read books because I like books. So that's me. And if that's you, and if you say, hey, I can write books easily, and I like working with people who read books, and I want to attract the subset of my audience that is going to read a book, it's going to be easier for me to work with them, then I think that points to a book. If you say, you know what, I like doing a podcast just as well or better, or I would prefer actually to create video, and I know that there's a subset of that audience that would prefer podcast or video, and I'd rather work with them, I think that's easier, then I would say forget the book and go make videos or go back to the podcast or do whatever it is that's going to attract the type of audience that you like to work with and that is easy for you to create the content.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I have done some, just sort of non-data driven, but just testing out. So, Josh, where do you absorb your information? What do you do? Where do you learn new stuff? And inevitably, a book seems to be a more common theme than most, although it is a little bit all over. However, because some of them are a little bit more old school, so to speak, right? They're still living 20 years ago in many, many ways. Books still, even if they don't read it, still has more marketing value. Oh shit, he's got a book. They don't, I mean, the podcast and the videos, that's for more sophisticated companies, frankly. So that's why I'm here, is because I'm 90% sure. I'm like, okay, I really want to, I think that's the way to go, is what it boils down to. And it's like, okay, now where do I go? Where do I start? And I've also, the Published Author Masterclass, I joined that in preparation, looking through some things, trying to map it out, making sure I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to do any harder than I need to. I don't want it to be painful. So I'm doing some due diligence, which is why I'm here.
Great. Well, it sounds to me like a book is the way for you to go then. I mean, it sounds like what you're good at, what you want to do, and sounds like your audience, there's enough of your audience that will gravitate to a book to justify it, it sounds like. I mean, I consume all the above. I love YouTube, I love social media, I love podcasts, and I love books. But I agree. I think there's something to having a book that has a certain cachet and a certain authority that is a little bit different. There's still a feeling like, oh, anybody can do a podcast, anybody can throw up a video, anybody can get on social media. But everybody knows that when they're holding a book, that somebody put some real work into that, and it represents something different than somebody just spouting off on one of the other mediums.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. I was just talking to my daughter the other day about this very thing and talking about her degree. So she's at university, and I said, for many employers, it's not what your degree is. It's just that you committed yourself for all that time and pain to get through it, to get the degree, because we rarely actually use undergraduate degrees for anything, but it does show a level of
graduate degrees.
Sometimes that too. But, and so I do see that as someone who actually does go through and finish a book, it's quite a commitment. It really says something about that person to me. So, so anyway, there you have it. And with that, I'm happy for you to go back to David and talk to him. So I'm happy to listen until I have to jump off, because it will all be valuable to me at this point.
Sounds great. Well, have you already downloaded your copy of the workbook, the Published Author Workbook?
Yes.
Okay,
sure did.
Great. You've got that. So I think that's a valuable tool to help you get started and figure out exactly what book to write and get rolling. The purpose of this group is that you use the workbook, and then when you have questions about how it applies specifically to your situation, then we've got this group so you can come and ask those questions. So,
love it. Okay, wonderful.
Glad to have you here. Glad you got the workbook, and I'm excited to see you progress through this work journey, and I hope you keep coming back so that we can help you out with it.
Yeah, me too. Well, thank you, David, and Josh, both of you, for letting me interrupt for a few minutes here. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
Well, it's great while this group is smaller that we're able to have more of this one-on-one attention. I'm trying to grow the group before the end of the year, starting basically this week with relaunching it. And so by the end of the year, we may have 50 people on these meetings, and it might have a very different dynamic and format. So, but I'm glad to
Okay.
be able to get to talk to you this much. So, all right, let's shift
Yes,
back to
thank you.
David. So, David, I was just asking you about your ideal audience,
Yep.
and I'm not sure if we finished that answer though.
So for me, the easiest play right now is obviously the senior living market of leaders that are struggling coming out of COVID and that stuff. So whether they're new or old established leaders, that it kind of brings it back to the basics of leadership, and then helps them to kind of relaunch themselves and give themselves the confidence going into it.
Okay. So then the name of the game is, how do we get as many copies of your book into as many of those hands as possible? And not just as many of those hands as possible, but there's probably some of those hands that would be better for them to have your book than others, right?
Right.
And sometimes we do that through marketing. Sometimes we do it by just sending the book out to those people and giving it to them as a gift, right? Because the question I like to ask sometimes is, how many, well, I guess the next question is, what are you trying to get from your audience? You want to give them the book, you want to give them that information, but what are you hoping to get in return? Is it speaking engagements, consulting? Is it
Well,
growing the business we're working on together? What is it that you
yeah.
want to get out of
So
them?
for me personally, it'd be just more speaking engagement, so I can still keep working on the marketing business and have that as the stable piece, and be able to go and stand in front of an audience and get an applause.
Okay. So how many speaking engagements could you do per year, or would you do ideally?
I'd like, my goal, or the dream, the goal is 2 keynotes a month for about 10,000 each.
Okay. So 24, let's say
Yeah.
20 to 30 engagements per year, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. So how many people do we need to get that book in their hands in order to get those 20 to 30 engagements? It's going to be more than 20 to 30, right? It's
Right.
probably going to be more than 50 to 100. It's probably going to be in the hundreds, right?
Right.
But maybe not 10,000 or 20,000. So it's not like we're trying to get 20,000 copies of the book out there. That would be fantastic, right?
Right.
But we probably don't need to go that far to help you hit your goals.
Okay.
And we might be able to do it with 200 or 300 books.
Right.
So I would look at that and say, okay, how do I get 300 books in the hands of the ideal audience, the people who are going to make decisions about hiring me to come and speak?
Okay.
And the easiest way to do that is to buy 300 books and mail them to those people. I
Right.
mean, that's the quickest, fastest way to get your book in their hands. And the great thing about mailing out a book is nobody gets a book in the mail and doesn't open it.
Right.
You get that kind of package that's as heavy as it is with a book in it. And people are going to open that and say, well, there's something inside here. I'm going to take a look at it. It's not just a piece of paper. It's not just a marketing brochure or something. Like, it feels like there's a book in here. So people
Right.
are going to open that, and then they've got your book, and you can put it, I would put some sort of letter or card or something introducing myself and saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is my book. I hope you enjoy it. I'm available for keynotes and speaking engagements, and I would love to talk to your audience. Here's my pricing, but if you buy my book, for everybody who attends, then I'll give you this kind of discount or something like that. Just
Yeah.
explain that pitch. That's the first thing I would do if the
Okay.
goal is I want to get a bunch of these speaking engagements.
Okay. And then, so let me piggyback on that. So I did order my author copies. I ordered a bunch of those. But being in Orlando and being one of the hot 3 spots for conferences, I also had targeted some meeting planners, like at Disney, the big convention center. Do you find value in sending the book to them to say, hey, I'm local, I don't cost travel, I don't cost a hotel. You ever get in a situation, I can bail you out because I can drive down the turnpike and be there in 35 minutes, or would love to engage with some of your upcoming conferences and be that recommendation. Do you feel like that would help as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it can't hurt, right? It
Right.
can only help. And that last minute keynote speaker is a valuable thing when somebody has the need. I mean, if you're the event organizer and your job is on the line based on how that event goes, and your keynote drops out because they got sick or something happened, and you need somebody good you can depend on, oh man, what a lifesaver it is to know that there's somebody down the road who could just pop in and do it
Right.
and do a good job on the spot, right?
Yeah.
So that's the type of thing I think it's great to advertise, because the event organizer might put you on their list and say, all right, I've got this guy. He's on my sticky note on my computer. If I ever have a need, I know I can just call this guy and he can just drive over and do it within
Mhm.
24 hours notice or something.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then how much on social media do you push the book? So I've started that I announced that it's coming out November 1st. Obviously, LinkedIn's really more my platform. I'm trying to get
Mhm.
into Instagram, but apparently Instagram only does box pictures. So I'm trying to sandwich my book picture down so you can see the cover, and I'm not
You,
being
you can
successful on that, but
I mean, you can expand the image on Instagram so it's not fully a box, although still it shows up to other people sometimes as a box. But
okay.
I don't think Instagram is your channel anyway.
Okay.
I mean, if you like Instagram, then sure, go ahead and post on there, and you could do reels and stuff, but it's not going to be the winner for you.
Okay.
LinkedIn is going to be 100 times better for you for sure.
Okay.
And so I would focus the bulk of my attention on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I would do, again, this goes back to what you're comfortable with and what you like to do. If you like posting on LinkedIn and you enjoy it and you find it easy to create LinkedIn posts, I would post every day. I mean, Monday through Friday at least, maybe Monday
Okay.
through Saturday, and get a post out there every day and talk about your book, talk about sections from the book, push excerpts from the book.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to repurpose the content from your book for LinkedIn. Uh, I mean, you can do an excerpt and say, one of my favorite parts of this book is when I got to interview so and so, and here's the main thing that he told me. There's a LinkedIn post. Or I love this quote that I got from so and so from my book. And you post that. Every single post, you want to refer back to the book.
Mhm.
Um, some easy tips for LinkedIn. Number one is don't put the link to your book in the post, because links kill the LinkedIn algorithm if you put a
Okay.
link within the post. So they just won't show it to anybody. LinkedIn wants people to stay on LinkedIn. They don't want people to leave LinkedIn.
Right.
So you can do that thing where you see people put the link in the first comment.
Okay.
Don't do it right after you post. You can say what a lot of people do, there are even tools for doing this, is they will write the LinkedIn post, let it get engagement for a day, and then they'll go back and edit the post and say, by the way, here's a link to my book in the first comment, and they'll put it in the first comment after a day or so. And that way they kind of get around their algorithm. You also
Okay.
miss the window with when it's getting the most attention, but that's the way you can put the link in there. But if people are really interested in the book, they'll go search for it on Amazon anyway. I mean,
Okay.
the link helps, but it kills the post. So
Okay.
on balance, it's easier to just mention the book by name and let people go find it on Amazon themselves if they're interested. Um, so don't put links in the post. And the other key with LinkedIn posts is to respond quickly to comments. So when you do
Mhm.
a post on LinkedIn, some people will post and then they leave for the day and they come back the
Yeah.
next day and then they respond to comments. Well, that misses out on the LinkedIn algorithm. So if you post on LinkedIn and then get busy on LinkedIn doing some other stuff, and then maybe after 5-10 minutes somebody has left a comment on that post, then you go back, you respond to that comment, try to get into a conversation with them. That's how you really activate the LinkedIn algorithm
Mhm.
so that it starts showing up to more people, and then more people comment on it and you can get more conversations going, and hopefully it really takes off that way.
Okay.
If you can get 5 comments on a LinkedIn post, that's actually pretty good these days. If you can get beyond 10 or 20 comments, you're actually doing phenomenally well. A couple of years ago, it was very easy to get 50, 60 comments on a post. It's just not that way anymore. It's tough. And so smaller engagement is a bigger deal these days, or it's at least the best that we can do.
Okay.
So, but the key to it is to get conversations going and get those comments flowing. That's what makes it show up in everybody's feed.
Got it. Cool beans.
There's a lot more I could go into on LinkedIn, but those are some of the main things. So, LinkedIn's a great outlet. Podcasts too would be great to go on. I know that you
Mhm.
have friends who do podcasts for the senior care industry,
Yep.
so I'd get on those. I would get on any podcast I could.
Yeah.
And that's as easy as just reaching out and pitching a
Hmm.
lot of different podcasts. Most podcasts are looking for good guests. And you've been on podcasts before, though. How many have you been on?
A bunch. And then I used to
Yeah.
do, we had a group called Bridge the Gap, and I did one as a contributor, as the host for
Mhm.
leadership and senior living every Wednesday, the first Wednesday of every month. So I did 12 of those that are out there as well.
Yeah, so you kind of know what it's like being the host and being on that side. And that's a good thing to put in your pitch, is to say, I've been a podcaster and I've also been on X number of podcasts.
Okay.
Because as soon as you say that, people say, okay, this guy knows how the game works. He's probably going to be pretty good. We don't have to really screen him and make sure he's not crazy or something. And so that's just an easy way to get your foot in the door and get past a lot of the screening process that people have mentally in their minds, where they're trying to make sure they don't get a crazy person on their podcast.
Got it.
And then if you followed up with, hey, I just came out with this new book and this is what it's about, it seems like it might fit your audience,
Hmm.
then that's a good pitch. And I think you'd be able to get on a lot of podcasts.
Okay.
It seems like results with podcasts are really hit and miss. Sometimes you're on a podcast and it leads to a bunch of book sales. Sometimes you're on a podcast that seems big and nothing happens. I was on Entrepreneur on Fire years ago, which is a huge,
Right.
massive podcast, and not a single thing happened from it. I mean, I didn't get a single email from anybody. I mean, nothing happened. And supposedly every episode of that podcast gets a minimum of 20,000 downloads or something.
Wow.
And I didn't see a blip in anything, website traffic, email signups, nothing. And so it just depends sometimes on the match and what you're able to do. So,
Okay.
but I think it's still good to go on a bunch of them. It's also great practice for just talking about your book and
Mhm.
practicing speaking about your topics. So I think even if you don't get anything in terms of book sales or leads out of it, I still think it's great practice to do if you have the time to do it.
Yep. Definitely.
Not to mention that those podcasts can turn into great content later if you want to chop them up and turn them into other social media content.
Right.
So I just started working with a lead gen type of guy that we're actually going to bring into Silver Oak, the business we're
Okay.
working on. And so I did 120-ish episodes of the Published Author podcast before I put it on pause. And so he's going through that now, and he's like, you've got 120 episodes here, but I can turn this into like 1,500 pieces of content because I can
Right.
take out so many little parts and
Hmm.
make an Instagram reel, put it up on TikTok, make it on YouTube Shorts. And so he's going through that and just chopping these things up. And so we're going to be putting out tons of micro content from those bigger pieces of content that I made. And that you can do the same thing with your past podcasts and any new podcasts you get on. So, James, got to run.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. We'll see you soon. Um, so I think the podcasts are great.
I've got 4 lined
They're
up for November already.
awesome. That's great. I feel like you already know all the things to do, so I'm not sure if I'm helping you out here, but
No, you are. That thing on the LinkedIn on the because I just wasn't sure. I don't want to be one of those guys who's constantly like 3 or 4 posts. You're like, okay, we get it. You're doing a book. Congratulations, kind of thing. But I also don't want to lose the momentum out of that as well. So trying to find that
you
right
know,
balance.
I don't think anybody gets really too bothered by too
Okay.
many posts from anybody. I mean, there are certain people that I follow, Alex Hormozy or Gary Vaynerchuk or somebody. I mean, they're
Right.
just churning out so much content. I never get annoyed by it, though. It's not
Right.
like it bothers me.
Okay.
And yet they're always visible. I mean,
Hmm.
every single time I go to LinkedIn, they
Yeah.
pop up.
Yeah.
And so I don't think you really can do it too much.
Okay.
There's probably some sort of declining effect after a while.
Right.
But I really don't think you can do too much. I don't think you're going to turn anybody off or annoy anybody. More
Okay.
than likely, what's going to happen if you post a lot is you're just going to get more traffic and more people seeing it and more results. And people might say, wow, you really seem to be active and doing a lot, and I see you everywhere. And that's all great stuff. And when I did this experiment a month ago or so where I tried to post a lot more than I normally post, like multiple times a day. And my post views, of course, because I was posting more, my post views went from like 5,000 to 20,000 or something. That's because I had a lot more posts out there. My
Right.
profile views went up only slightly, which was interesting. Not that many people were going from my post through to my profile, although it did increase, but just not in a huge way. But I did get people reaching out to me and asking about book coaching or about MWI or about other
Right.
stuff that I'm working on. And so I did see results where it really mattered, which is money coming in the door, or at least
Yeah.
leads. And so I felt like I saw the results to justify posting more. And so if you could do 3 or 4 posts a day, I'd say go for it.
Okay.
I'd encourage it.
Sounds good.
Let's see, I think we already talked about reviews on a previous call, didn't we? Or were you not on that
Maybe.
one?
I don't think I was on that one.
That's something else that I would look into.
Okay.
And I've just edited the published author workbook within the last, I'm constantly editing it at least once a week. But there's a link in your copy of it to go get the latest copy of it. And I've been adding a lot about getting book reviews. And
Okay.
so there's some new information in there that I would check out. One of those especially only applies when you have a new book out.
Okay.
And so I would look at that one first because it's the one that you have to do now, between
Yeah.
now and 1 month after you launch. Otherwise, you miss
Okay.
the window to be able to do it at all the rest of them you could wait on, although I would still do them as soon as possible. Uh, Ideally, you want to get to 20 reviews on Amazon as soon as you can. I mean, the first day, if at all possible.
Okay.
And uh, that's going to come mostly from family and friends. It's the
Right.
people who know you and like you and are
Yep.
willing to do you a favor. Those are the people who can go and leave a review. Um, you don't want to have a lot of family with the same name doing it because then it becomes kind of obvious that
Yeah.
that's what's going on.
No worries.
So
I
it's
only have
better
one
if,
of those. That's the wife.
all right. So if you can get people contacts through work, other people that are on their own separate computers around the world leaving reviews the first day, that's
Okay.
ideal.
Perfect.
And I would just ask for the favor. Don't say, hey, I'll do this for you or quid pro quo. Like just say, I need your help. I need a favor. Would you be willing to leave a review on the day that my
Right.
book launches?
Yeah.
And
So I've got
then,
a couple key people. Chad Willerson out in California, who's
yeah.
published his 19th book now or whatever.
Hmm.
So we've been connected on LinkedIn for a number of years, and I always buy and review. And I said, "Hey, I got my first book coming out." He's like, "I'm on it. I got you." So, and
Yep.
then I've got a couple doctor friends, some senior living people. So everybody's in there pretty early to do that, and that's why I did the pre-order on the Kindle. So on that first
Yep.
day, it's $5.99, and I've got a code that I can give away so they can go on and get that. Because I remember reading that 20 reviews right away is helpful to bump your book for that piece on Amazon.
Yep. Yeah. So I just pre-ordered it. So I'll get the notification when it goes live and then I'll leave a review as well.
Awesome.
And the more people you can get to do that, it's hard. It's like
Yeah.
pulling teeth to get people to do this.
Right.
But if you can get to 20 reviews as soon as possible, it kind of breaks the ice for other people who are coming to buy the book because they see, oh, I mean, there are 20 people have bought this and it just barely came out. So, it
Yeah.
looks like this is a popular book. Nobody wants to be first.
Right.
And so when people come and they see a book with 0 reviews or 3 reviews or less than 10, it looks bad.
Yeah.
Once it gets to 20, it's kind of like it's enough for that initial part. But then the next goal is to get to 50 to 100. Once you get to 100, it looks like, wow, everybody's reading this book and
Right.
I need to read this because everybody else is.
Gotcha.
Um, to get to 100, that's tough unless you have a really big email list or a big group or something. But there are these services that I go through in the newest version of the workbook where you can join for a fee, and then
Okay.
essentially it's not trading reviews per se, because that goes against Amazon rules. And so what they do is they set up a 3-way trade.
Got it.
where you review somebody's book and then you get credits, which you can then use to essentially get somebody else to review your book, but you're never reviewing somebody who has reviewed your book. That would
Mhm.
violate Amazon rules. So you can do these three-way things. It takes a little bit of work because you have to review a bunch of other people's books. You can't just buy the reviews
Right.
on some of these sites, but it is one way that you can bump up the number of reviews you have. There are some sites where you can just buy reviews essentially, and they have a network of people. You have to uh, like upload a PDF of your book or something so that people get the book. You can
Yeah.
also, I think, specify that it be a verified purchase, but essentially, you're not paying people to review the book, but you're paying for the service that gets people to review your book. And it is a little bit slow, so it's good to start early
Okay.
because it can take like 2 months to get the reviews from this.
Gotcha.
And it will cost you around, the cheapest I found is about $50 per review.
Okay.
So it's not super cheap, but it's not super expensive either.
Okay. Cool.
I know a guy who can get you 1,000 reviews, but he charges 85 grand for it. So that's where I'm like, yeah. And that's like the minimum. Like you have
Right.
to, he won't do like 85 a piece. It's more like, no, you have to get 1,000 or nothing. So I'm like, well, if I were a billionaire or I
Right.
know somebody who's a billionaire, maybe they would go for that so they can
Correct.
bump it up. But yeah, that's a whole different level.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, do you have a minute? I just really want to introduce
Sure.
you to my wife too. I wanted to.
Yeah.
Hey, baby. Allison, come here. I want you to meet Josh.
Are you guys able to see that I'm online?
Josh
No?
is my wife, Allison.
Hi,
Hello.
Josh. Nice to
It's
meet
so
you.
nice to meet you.
He was just asking
Hey.
about you and how you're doing, so I wanted to put a face to the name. So
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Allison, for introducing us, because now David and I are working together on this exciting project, and that never would have happened except
Yeah.
that
No,
you
it's so-
pushed him to reach out. So
It's so funny. I have absolutely no idea how I ended up following you on Twitter, but I obviously liked one of your posts or something, and I'm like, oh, I'll follow him. And yes, it was funny. David was like, hey, I know him too. So
that's
the
great.
the stars align. So it's nice
Yeah.
to meet you. Put a face to a name.
Well, it's great to meet you as well. And I've heard a lot about you, and I'm glad that your health is improving and seems like you're doing well.
Thank you.
David said you're starting to notice things that he can do around the house to clean up and stuff. And so
The
if you're
list is
noticing those
getting-
things, then that's better, right?
Yeah, the list is getting longer, and he'll say, "You don't need to remind me every 6 months, like to do that. I can do that."
Oh, that's great.
He
Well,
needs direction. I tell him that's why he got married.
well, we all do, don't we?
Yeah. Well, it was nice to meet you.
It's great to meet you as well.
As I fall over my.
Hey, Nicole, I heard you chime in right there. Sorry, we have it set so that if you're not showing video, I don't see your name, but I heard your voice and
Oh,
I
that
see you're
makes
on there.
sense. 'Cause
So
I'm like, wow, what's going on? And I was having some trouble connecting too. So I'm glad that you at least know that I'm here. Maybe I should change that to a picture or something.
well, maybe I need to change it back so that we can actually see people even if they're not showing video, because I do want to know if somebody's on. So, well, I'll change the settings next time, but
That's fine.
we know that you're here. So, how are things going for you, Nicole?
Things are going well. I have a bit of a confession to make. I had joined your class, as you know, during the pandemic.
Mhm.
And frankly, I just want to thank you for that as well, because it gave me direction during a scary time. It gave me something to focus on. And even though my book about how to manage things during a pandemic really has no interest or audience right now, the idea of wanting to write a book still stuck with me. And I was still getting your emails when you started. I think you were doing these on a day where I work out of the office with my current engagement, so I couldn't join. And so
Mhm.
I started joining when they started happening on Fridays, very excited about that. But it was kind of something that it had been off my radar for some time.
Mhm.
But yeah, I kind of joined and started dipping my toes into it a little bit again. And I, you know, I wasn't fully 100% committed, and I now am, and I'm now looking at what is my timeline to finish this. Working through some. I am a class A procrastinator. So I've been trying to figure out like what's the best way. I actually do enjoy writing. I don't know what my problem is, but I find I find myself opting not to do it more than to do it. And I think part of that also has to do with the pandemic and me working largely from home still. Um, it, it's not appealing to me to come to the desk that I worked at all day to do additional. So what I've been doing is finding other places to write. And that's really helpful too, because I mean, you went there to write. Now you can't just go home. You know what I mean? It's not like when you're at home and you're like, oh, I'll do the dishes, and then you know what I mean. You're there to write. So I've been looking at some interesting places to write. There's a beautiful historic library that is open on Saturdays. So this Saturday is the first week that I'm going to start going there. And my friend Chat GPT gave me a bunch of other great places to think of. One of which is high-end hotel lobbies. I have tons of hotels around me. I could literally go to a different one, and that also just kind of brings some additional joy to the experience. But yeah, I need to start looking at your workbook and those exercises that even the first time I never fully sat down and finished. I know what's being asked, and I kind of have an idea, but I never really went and thought through all of the genius zones and said, okay, this is the answer to that question. But yeah, I've I can say now that I've committed to it, and I'm really looking to do something hopefully with completion on or before February of next year. I'm not looking to write a big book. I already know what book I'm writing, which is just basically the bare bones of Agile. And the reason for that is just to establish the ground rules. I think that now that Agile is semi-adopted in a lot of places, there's so many books about it, and they're way longer than you need to read to know what to do. And I think there is a market for a new, more up-to-date, here are the very basics, with a little bit of opinion thrown in as well. Right now, as I've been saying the last couple of times I've been on, I'm writing quote unquote vomit draft. I have sectioned out my outline and written part of an intro and part of a bio. I kind of hop around, and I also sort of will let myself go on tangents about things that I know from my experience, opinions I have. And that probably will not make it into the book because I want the book to be really small. But you're the one who told me I think the Abe Lincoln quote, if I had time to write something shorter. What was it?
Yeah.
I would have written
If I had more time,
shorter.
if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. Yeah.
Exactly. So I want to get it all out, and then but I want to keep the book really pretty much almost basically a textbook. A little bit of opinion thrown in here and there, but pretty straightforward and short, brief, easy to read, easy to digest. Lots of margin, lot of pictures, things that make go, oh, I can breeze through this and this afternoon and be done. The rest of the material can be used as content elsewhere,
I just went on Amazon and I searched for Agile Made Easy, and there's no book with that title, which kind of blows me away. Like,
Hey,
there's somebody who wrote a book called All About Agile, Agile Management Made Easy, but it's got 3 reviews and it was written in 2012. And so it's obviously not taking it. And there's Lean and Agile Made Simple, but it's
yeah,
got 23.
we're not going any further than, well, actually, I want to be specific to Scrum. Well, maybe Agile. I don't know. I mean, I am not done. I mean, I could take a look
Yeah.
at being simply Agile as opposed to specific to Scrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because I remember you showed me that one book that you reference a lot, which is that very short.
Did you get a copy? Did you see it?
I I think I bought a copy. I know I got my
It's so
COO to get a
inviting.
copy. Yeah.
I've used it to train a lot of people. I mean, it's been a few years now. But you know, back when we all used to go to the office 5 days a week, I used it a lot of times to just teach somebody, bring somebody up to speed right then and there.
Hmm.
And use that kind of as the basis. And that's kind of the type of book that I want to do as well. And
Hmm.
what I like about that is it's thin, it's just very accessible. It looks like almost I don't want to I'll say the word that comes to mind, but that's not exactly the right word to use, and it kind of goes in a different direction. But it's almost like a child's book, right? I mean, it's just something that I mean, any teenager, anybody with reading comprehension skills would look at it. And also, like, some of these longer books, they just go on and on about a lot of additional detail that to just learn the basics, you don't need all of that. And
Hmm.
to see a big block of text on every single page and no illustrations, especially when you're trying to learn something new, is kind of um, uh, nobody's going to read it. If you're trying to use it as a teaching tool, give it to people to say, hey, here's what you need to do now that you're a product owner. Um, it- they'll say, oh, thank you, and they'll probably read a couple pages in front of you, and they'll put it on their bookshelf.
Hmm. Have I ever shared this book with you, Nicole? Exactly What to Say
No,
by Phil Jones. Get a copy of this book and get
yeah,
the paperback version of it so you can actually hold it and see it. I talk about this book a lot, but it's so good. This is a book that you can read in an hour easily. And it's sold millions of copies at this point. But the great thing about this book is that it is so simple, so easy to understand, so quick to read. So the first time I read it, I thought, this is fantastic. This is so good. So I just immediately started over and read it again. I think I read it like 4 or 5 times in 2 days
hmm,
because I was just like, this is so good. And I
okay,
was just fascinated by the book itself and how the author put everything together. And there's an industry around short books. There are publishers that do nothing but publish very short, quick books.
oh,
There's a publisher out there called Sense and Respond, and they actually put a little clock in the upper right hand of the book cover telling you how many minutes it takes to read the book. And their goal is if you're flying on a plane, you can read this book before you get off of your flight, even if
that's
it's a short flight
that's
from Arizona to
that's
California or
the time
something.
frame I'm looking for too. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Right. And so I think there's a market for you to, since this is already the direction that you've been talking about going in, I think there's a market to say, I want to write the Agile or the Scrum book that is the best introduction, the best quick read, the best easy read, and therefore it's the first book that anybody's going to buy for somebody that they want to teach about Scrum or Agile. And I think there's a hole that you can fill for that book. The book that you referred to me, I think, kind of fills that, but I think you could take it another step and make it
Yeah.
even simpler and even easier for people to understand. The great thing about short, quick books is that that's what people say when they hand them out to other people is they'll say, hey, I've got this great book you need to read. It's a really quick read. It's a really easy read. That's what you want people to say because it makes people feel like they're not asking too much by asking somebody to read that book, which makes them more likely to share that book. If you share a 400-page book with somebody, then they feel like they need to make excuses like it's really big, but it's really good. And it's going to take you a long time, but it's really good stuff. Or just skim the first half, but then read the second half. But with a short book, it's just easy. It's, hey, this is a really, really fast read. Like you can read this in an hour. That's a great place to be to have that kind of book.
Yeah, I think that goes along with sort of our social media attention spans that we kind of have now.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, get a copy of that Exactly What to Say. I think if you look at that and you consider that as one of your hero books to help you
Yeah,
have a template for your book, I think it could really help.
thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Nicole? Anything else we can help you out with?
Nope, not today. However, I also want to say that joining, being able to join every week is something that is helping to sort of keep me honest. I think if you weren't here every week, I probably would just stop. So again, master level procrastinator here. So, but I'm moving into the other column.
Me too. That's part of the reason I'm doing this, is it helps me too. So,
Oh, good.
well, great. Well, thanks, Nicole. Jeff, welcome. Good to see you again. How are things
Hey.
going? I already know kind of how things are going, but
Yeah. So, well, the book is scheduled to go live on Monday. So it could have been already live, but I mispressed the button. I had a placeholder for like the date of live, and then but that was like in Amazon, that's an earlier page. It's like page 1 of the 3. And then I put in all the other stuff, and then I didn't change it back. And then I pressed go, and I thought I could change it, but no, it's all locked in. So I have to wait till Monday. But
this
I
is an
just want to
important lesson, I
interrupt to just
think,
say
for other authors.
congratulations.
oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
thanks.
Awesome.
So yeah, and just getting things set up. I guess it's just like, hey, I've been thinking about for months now, like this whole like getting the book to purchase ready, but then it's like, what now?
Yep.
And so I'll send an email, kind of a launch email to my book army list, and probably to my whole mailing list. I'll probably, and then try and hound family and friends and whoever to go grab a copy and give it an Amazon review. And then I got to go make a list and be like, who do I just want to send a book to? So that's a different list, but it's kind of it's fun and exciting, and then it's like, oh, like it just shifts to a different stage of the book.
Mm-hmm. Is it up for pre-sale? Do you have it up for pre-sale?
It is on the Kindle, yeah.
Okay, let me find it real quick. Okay, there we go.
You were able to find it?
I was able to find it here. So just for anybody else watching this video, there's Jeff's book. All right. And then are you planning on lowering that price for kind of an introductory promotion period or anything?
Yeah, but I think that's locked in. I can't until
You're stuck until Monday?
Yeah, I think I'm stuck until Monday.
Okay.
So
yeah. Just for other people who might watch this later, Jeff, can you talk a little bit more about this lesson you learned about that publishing schedule and setting the price, and then kind of being stuck into that launch date?
yeah, so Amazon's kind of, when you're setting it up in KDP, there's kind of 3 main pages. There's kind of all the information about the book, and that's like your description. Then there's the content, and then there's, I think the pricing is the last page. But you can keep it in draft mode, but once you click submit, everything is locked in for 72 hours till they review. And if you're trying to launch the book immediately, yeah, so if you put in on that first page is where you say, hey, this is when the scheduled published date or whatever, you can't change that. Although after it goes through like 72 hours of review, if that launch date is still like a few weeks away, then you can change it, but it needs to be less than 5 days away from the current day. So if I was trying to launch this in mid-November, or like that's a date I put in, I could now change it now that it's been reviewed, and I could bring that to just a few days away. But anyway, and so
you can't change it from like 5 days to 2 days or something.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now, because I'm within just a few days, I can't say just publish it now, because it's less than 5 days away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I almost thought I had a workaround, but where like I was trying to get them to cancel the one that it was in review and then just set it up again, but I couldn't do that because they couldn't stop it. And the ISBN was tied up in that listing, and so I couldn't do that.
It would have been a huge mess. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess technically yesterday when it was through review, I could have just taken it down and then started it again. It would have gone through the review process. But at this point, I was like, I don't want to mess with anything. It's scheduled for Monday. We're fine. So
Yeah.
And so everything's locked in, and so the price and everything, and so, but it's technically like whatever the Greenwich Mean Time is, I think, and so Monday, like at midnight, so that'll be like 7 p.m. for me on Sunday. So technically, I could probably go check it on Sunday night and see it and maybe make some changes. But even when you make changes, I think it still takes 24, 48, 72 hours, depending whatever the change is.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it takes to change the price. I think it's about 24 hours. So I'll go in there and try and change the introductory price.
It varies. I've seen it take anywhere from 8 hours to 72 hours. Well, maybe not 72. I don't think it's ever taken that long, but anywhere from like 8 hours to maybe 1 to 2 days, 24 to 48 hours to make a price change or some other really, really minor change. But yeah, it's funny because you'd think some of that stuff would be immediate. Like, why do they even need to approve a price change? It seems like that would just happen instantly, but I don't know. I don't understand the reasons for why they have to approve that.
Yeah, because I imagine they rarely, if ever, don't approve it, but maybe sometimes they do, and they just want a human control to make sure it's not violating standards or something for some reason.
Yeah.
But
well, Jeff,
they could
David
also have all sorts of controls around that too. That's their problems, but
yeah. David is just a few days behind you. His book is November 1st, you said, right, David?
Nice.
Yeah. So he held up his review copy. It's got that stripe on it, just like yours. And
yeah, I got the second one last week. So or earlier this week, actually, I guess. So yeah. So we made just a little bit of a change for the final thing. There's just a little bit of bleed onto the spine there, so just move that over just a little bit, but not a whole lot of change.
Those spines are tricky with the publishing on demand because they're never the same twice. You order the book two times and things move around a little bit, and sometimes they move around quite a bit. It's never been
quite in center. Even though like the design is very clearly like exactly in the center with the template, so it's like whatever.
Yeah, that's another thing that you would think they would have dialed in exact, because that's kind of a big deal with a book, that things be centered on the spine. And yet I've seen them move all over the place where you center it and then the name's getting cut off or the title's getting like actually bleeding over to the front or the back. And you're just like, how can it be that far off when I know I got it right? And then you order another copy and it's perfect. And you're like, okay, it's in the printing that it happens.
Yeah.
I think it's the guy who's drinking coffee, leans against the machine while it's going through, and
yeah. Good thing is, if I think about like me buying and reading a book, like I'm never like, okay, is that off? Is that directly centered? Like the good thing is anyone who's actually looking at the book, they're just like reading the book for the most part instead of like looking for all the issues, unless they're an editor and they just can't help themselves. So.
Yeah, we as authors are always more nitpicky about this stuff than anybody else will be, other than cover designers or publishers or somebody else. But yeah. Judith, welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Hey.
Sorry, I missed the first hour, but excited to do some reading.
All right. No worries. We were just talking with Jeff and David. Jeff's book is coming out Monday and David's is coming out November 1st. So they're on the tail end of, they're on the tail end of publishing. Now begins the marketing. So
David, what's your book?
It's called Kazoo Leadership.
Kazoo?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about it, David, for Jeff and Judith who haven't heard of it before.
Pretty much it's a short read. It's about 48 pages. It's just getting people back to the simplicity of leadership, and we made it way too complicated. I come from senior living and there's like 9,000 different things to do every day, and it's, let's get back to what is it, the training piece around that. And I equate it to playing a kazoo. You can play a kazoo in 5 steps, and hopefully this will lead to some good keynotes for me. So I'm excited about it.
Cool. Fun. I like the cover. I found it.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Very
it's a unique
playful.
name. I mean, it's one of those things where there's no confusing it with any other book out there, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And it's memorable.
Definitely going to want to, like, I would, if I saw Kazoo Leadership, I would definitely dive in to see what that's about,
Yeah.
which is the idea, right? Go to the next step.
Exactly. Yeah.
It kind of forces you to ask, what is this? I've got to at least crack this open and see what this book is.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Judith, how are things going for you?
Slowly. I thought I would have a draft by the end of August, and then I thought I would have a draft by the end of September, and now I hope I have a draft by the end of the year. I got sidetracked the last couple of weeks, but I'm setting up a schedule again. I was on a good schedule, so now I'm going to set up a schedule again to write daily, even if it's just for an hour, and to simplify. So to David's point, and I always wanted to simplify, it's just that I had tons of material, so it was just a matter of getting it all in and now pulling it apart. So bye, Nicole. So that is now my goal between now and the end of the year, is really have something readable. And so I have my 3, I think I mentioned this the last time I was here, but I want my messages to be actionable, relatable, and inspiring. So every sentence, every message, and write 1 message per sentence, has to be clear. And if it's not clear, it gets booted. Or if it's just repetitive. There is a lot of repetition. That I know. I am going to need a dang good editor. But yeah. So that's where I'm at. It's, yeah. I sometimes, what I'm telling myself is that having had distance from it can be helpful. So I'm hoping that the fact that I have not been able to open it for 2 weeks is a good thing. It's like, I know that when I was a runner, when I took time off, my first run back was the best.
Yep.
So I'm really hoping it works for writing as well. And Josh, I almost didn't recognize you because your background is different. I'm like, wait, is that Josh?
I'm out of my comfort zone. Yes, I'm unrecognizable without all my books. No, I'm in a hotel today, so yeah.
Where are you located? Where are you right now?
I'm still in Arizona, just doing a little staycation thing and trying to get out of the house to get some more focused work done.
Oh,
I'm ghostwriting a client's book, and it's been difficult for me to get around to writing it. It just seems like the days go by and I'm like, well, didn't do anything today. There's another day. Didn't do anything today. And so the idea was my wife and I, we do regular getaways. And so we scheduled a little extra time so that we could have some focused work time. And I'm still not sure how much I'll get done on it today, but hopefully I get at least a little bit in on it.
yeah. And every step makes a difference. Like every sentence, every word, I love this saying, every masterpiece was created one stroke at a time. So if we think about these masterpieces, they didn't just like that, the artist had just 1 stroke. So that's how I'm looking at it. Build it 1 word at a time.
Yeah. A couple of thoughts. Taking a break from things. There's a neuroscientist at Stanford named Andrew Huberman, and he has a very popular podcast these days. You've heard of him. Yeah. And he grew up as a skateboarder, and I'm a skateboarder. So I love listening to him because we have this shared interest as well. And he talks about how in skateboarding or other sports, when you try something, you're trying to do a trick or a move or whatever it is, your brain is part of that equation, and sometimes you just can't get it. And he says, if you go to sleep and sleep overnight, your brain works on that while you're sleeping. And then the next day, all of a sudden, it's easy because your brain was repeating that motion and it's in your brain over and over and over again. And then the next day, everything falls together. And he said, there's research to show that this is how your brain works. And I think it's the same with writing and a lot of other things, that you might be taking a break, or you feel like you're taking a break, but your brain behind the scenes is still working on that. So you come back to it, and all of a sudden things fall into place, and you think, wow, how did that happen? I haven't even thought about this for 2 weeks. Well, you haven't thought about it consciously, but maybe your brain was still working on it behind the scenes and figuring stuff out.
Yeah. I do think that's the case to some degree, and we've all experienced this. It's always great to know that there's evidence for it and that it's not random or an accident. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll report back after the hour.
And the other thing about getting the writing time in, this is such a complicated thing, and I don't know of any author who hasn't struggled with this. I know Stephen King struggled with it, even though he's prolific, but he had periods where he was not able to write and just couldn't get the words out. And every other author I know of struggles with this. Nicole, who was on earlier, talked about how she's trying to get out of her house to write now because it's harder to write at home. So she said she goes to luxury hotel lobbies and works there, and she finds it easier to focus and write there. Neil Gaiman, who wrote Coraline and a bunch of other popular books, he said his rule is he'll go out every morning and he has a table outside that he sits at, and he says, I don't have to write, but I can't do anything but write. So I can think, I can just sit there, or I can write, but I'm not allowed to do anything else. I can't check email, I can't read, I can't do anything but work on my book or just sit and think. And so he sits there for an hour, and sometimes he says he just sits there for the whole hour and doesn't write anything, and he just sits and he thinks. But he says that's how he gets his books done. For me, the best writing experience I've had to date is a book I haven't published yet, but it's finished with its first draft. And it's about 400 pages. It's a lot of text. And it felt so easy, but the routine I got into was, it was just the first thing I worked on every day. And I would just tell myself, 15 minutes. That's all I need, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I would sit down and I'd write for 15 minutes every morning. And some days I'd just get a tiny bit out, but then some days I'd be like, oh, I'm in the flow. This is feeling great. And I would just keep going. And then I'd end up writing for 5 hours or something. And that book just spilled out so easily but the one rule for me was the first thing and just 15 minutes. And it spilled out. It was really easy to get that out. Now I'm trying to duplicate that with this book I'm ghostwriting, and it's harder for some reason, but it worked that time.
Well, the book you're ghostwriting isn't intrinsic, so it's going to be harder.
Yeah.
But I've had that experience, which is why this has been such a mystery to me, because I've had the experience of sitting down and the information flows, and I'm knowledgeable in what I'm writing about, and yet, so I for a little while I was able to do that little bit. I started my day. That happened for a while. Things got sidetracked. I do write in a different location in my house. I don't write here, which is where I work. I've thought about going out, which I thought about actually just taking a weekend away. You know how writers go to a lake and they and I think that all of these things are useful. Everything you've just mentioned is really useful, because it may not be the same tactic every time, but any tactic that gets us to sit down and look at the page is worthwhile. Yeah, thank you for all of those suggestions.
Judith, I had a former leader tell me that I wasn't procrastinating. I was just waiting for inspiration. And let me tell you, I've run with that for the last 35 years of my life.
100%. 100%. I love that.
I'm going to use
I would love the
with
inspiration
people.
to come before I, you know, my hair's not getting darker.
Well, keep plugging away. And I can't say this enough, and so I keep repeating it, but the power of that vomit draft of just saying, I'm going to make a mess. I mean, this is Jackson Pollock, who was famous for his splattered paint stuff, you know, that we all look at and we're like, well, I could do that. But it's like, okay, this is a mess, right? Like, this is literally paint dripped and drizzled and thrown at a piece of masonite.
Yeah.
And you look at that and you're like, that's a mess. That's what our first draft should look like. The first draft should be this kind of mess. And then you take this and you turn it into this. Even this, the Mona Lisa, like Leonardo da Vinci, he painted over this multiple times. He did sketches. He did all sorts of foundational work before he did this. And even when he did this, it's not like it just came out. He worked on this for years.
Yeah.
And speaking of procrastination, I was reading Walter Isaacson's book on Da Vinci and said that he would go in to paint, and sometimes he would sit there for 5 hours looking at the painting, doing nothing. And then he'd get up and he'd make one paint stroke and he'd go home. And that was it. That's all he did for the day. And so some of these paintings took years, but
yeah,
it's
I think
that's how we make a
quote's
masterpiece.
So sorry. I think that quote is attributable to Leonardo da Vinci. That one about every masterpiece is created one stroke at a time, and I'm sure it was in Italian or in Latin, but that it's been attributed to him. So there's the inspiration.
But I've just seen so many authors get hung up on, oh, I need to just sit down and paint the Mona Lisa, just from zero to Mona Lisa. That's how a book is written. It's just like, that is not how we write books. It's a big mess, and we splatter stuff all over the place, and then we start cleaning it up, and it goes through a lot of steps.
That's helpful. That is really helpful.
So that's why I say, even with the 15 minutes a day,
yeah,
even if you're just like, I just need to get one splatter on there, just one idea, one thing, something down, some note, some idea. I don't need to make it sound good. I don't need to write. I just need to make a note of that idea and get that down. You do that every day and it builds up. And after 2 or 3 months, you're like, wow, look at this. I got like 60 pages of notes here. Now I just need to organize this.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm right there. So I think, yeah, that's where that's the part I'm gonna dive into.
Yeah. All right. Well,
I'll be driving through your state, by the way, on Sunday.
Oh, yeah?
I'm driving from Santa Fe to Los Angeles.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah.
When are you coming back? Are you coming back through as well, driving?
Yeah. Yeah. It's because I'm driving, I've left my return date a little fluid, but sometime the following week, around the 1st of November.
Okay, great. I'm not available this Sunday, but on your way back, let me know when you're coming through. If you have time to stop and just meet in person or something, that would be fun to do.
Yeah, that would be great. I will make a note of that. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Do either of you want to stick around for a working session, or do you need to go, or what are your plans now?
I'm going to write, but
Okay.
if you need to go, that's totally fine. I've blocked this out.
What about you, David?
I got work to do, baby. Got to get some deals done. Get some marketing out there.
Okay. We'll let you drop off, David. Judith, and I'll stick around here on the Zoom call. I need some accountability to get some writing done, so I will stick here and we can hold each other accountable to get some work done on our books.
Great.
Nice meeting you, Judith.
Nice meeting you too. Congratulations.
Good to chat, David.
Zoo leadership.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ciao.